We are. Hey, folks. This is Screen Watching. My name is Dan Barrett, joined here by Simon Foster. Now, Simon, here's the awkward thing about this week's podcast, in that we're going to talk about 5 things. We've got 2 TV shows, 3 movies.
Yeah.
Those are our reviews for the week. And then we've got some more stuff we're going to talk about around the size
sure.
of this. But like, the reviews are what people come to the podcast for. And I would say of the 5 reviews, there's one thing that I'm incredibly excited about and is by far one of the best things that I'm going to talk about all year.
Okay.
And then there's the other 4 things, which I have a range of emotions on, which range from thorough disinterest to absolute vomit nausea over it.
Okay. The content providers have let us down this week. Is that what you're suggesting? We'll make it interesting. Don't switch off after that introduction, because we'll do a good show, but it's the content providers that are sticking it to us.
Yeah, look, I'm saying don't switch off, because I'm going to run through what it is that just repels me about all of these things.
Okay. And we've got a good birthday segment this week, so hang around for the end.
Oh, man, do I love that segment. Oh, jeez. What are we doing here, Simon?
Press the button.
That's not the theme song.
Oh, God.
This is the theme song. Yeah, it's one of those podcasts.
Not like TV, only better.
Television, teacher, mother.
Secret lover. What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
Hey, look, as we said, this is the Screen Watching Podcast. My name is Dan Barrett. You can find me at the Dan Barrett on Twitter and other places around the internet. But right now, I'm in front of a microphone. I'm joined here by Simon Foster.
It's good to be here, Daniel. How are you, sir? I've had a very busy week. I'm not really interested how you are. I want to keep talking for a second. We're recording this late on a Friday evening. Now, anyone who knows the podcast and who's been a fan of the podcast for a long time, I know you're out there. These late night pre-records, they can go anywhere. You know, usually by now I'm knee deep in blowing hookers, but I put all that off for the show because I want to stay focused on talking about the things that I know interest the people out there.
Here's the thing. I was drinking from a bottle of water just then when you said the phrase fans of the podcast, and like water almost went spraying out my face.
Yeah, I understand. I have had a fascinating week this week. I did a little bit of, I've forgotten her name, the lady who you clean out your closets and bring joy to yourself. What was that?
That would be my mom. No, you're talking about Ms. Marie Kondo?
Marie Kondo. I did a full cleanse of my the small part of my dressing room that belongs to me. The rest is all my wife's stuff. But I did a cupboard clean out, and I found and I kept, because it still brings me joy, a T-shirt that I bought in Hong Kong in 2003. And for those of you watching on the YouTube channel, look.
Sorry, wait a sec. For those that aren't watching on the YouTube channel, you can know that it says FBI Female Body Inspector.
No, this is when I was, and I still am crazy about the Incredibles movie. And this T-shirt, I was in Hong Kong and I bought this Incredibles T-shirt, and it means a lot to me. And I've kept it for, what is that, 18, 19 years. So it's, I threw out a whole lot of other stuff. If you're traveling around to the op shops around the northern beaches of Sydney, the northern suburbs, and you'll find lots of well stretched out underwear. But other than that, I kept a lot of stuff.
I don't think they're allowed to resell that. Not legally.
No, I don't think so. That's more dumping. They can't sell socks either, I was told. They're not allowed to sell socks and underwear, but hey, someone might take them.
Okay, this podcast is taking a dark turn. Let's swing this. Let's pivot in the direction of some reviews, because that's what we're here for.
It stinks.
Now, Simon, I don't know if you've looked at the files that I've uploaded to shared cloud so that you can, hear the clips and whatnot. Yeah. But I think this one was just called Dumbledore shit.
Play it.
Do I really have to?
Yeah, play it.
Sorry, this is the part where, this is what I have to tell the audience, which is that I have a ridiculously small cable. And I actually have to move my screen so I'm able to reach over to access this. It's ridiculous.
Perfect.
Years ago, we got our first glimpse into the wizarding world.
That's it? That's the clip? Oh, God, I got to take over that part of the show. Now, I've not been the greatest student.
Please take over that part of the show. It takes a really long time to get those clips together.
It took a long time to get that clip together? Okay, fair enough. All right. Now, listen, let me get on with this. I've not been the greatest student of author J.K. Rowling's work, it must be said. As an adult, I didn't read any of the Harry Potter or Fantastic Beasts books. I saw the movie once each out of professional obligation, and that was enough. And some of her views on the LGBTIQ plus community left me in no great hurry to hear another single word from her ever. So understanding she's adapted the screenplay from her own book, I ambled into a very early session of the third Fantastic Beasts film, The Secrets of Dumbledore, without too much enthusiasm. Let me quickly run through the plot here. We rejoin the rise of fascist poster boy Grindelwald, Johnny Depp in the last two films, but Mads Mikkelsen here, Johnny Depp was bumped off for his off-screen indiscretions, which is really saying something in a J.K. Rowling film. Now, Grindelwald is employing Trump-like tactics, instilling fear and a blazing hatred in his wizard, warlock, and witch followers for the Muggle or human population, which he plans to wipe out. Turns out Grindelwald, and this is an interesting twist, was once the gay lover of Hogwarts head wizard Albus Dumbledore. I'm realizing this is the first time I've said a lot of these words out loud. A dashing Jude Law, well before he morphs into Richard Harris or Michael Gambon in the following Harry Potter films. And they share a blood bond that forbids them from harming each other. But Dumbledore is the only wizard powerful enough to stop him, an almighty task in itself, but one he has to complete while reuniting some key family elements, and no spoilers, that's the secret in the film's title. The Fantastic Beasts films to date have been centered on Newt Scamander, a typically twitchy Eddie Redmayne, a character who doesn't really have much to do in this film. The central conflict is all Grindelwald and Dumbledore, and Redmayne is shunted to a one-dimensional subplot along with trilogy stalwarts like Dan Fogler as the Muggle sidekick Kowalski, Alison Subal as the mind reader Queenie, and Callum Turner as Newt's brother Theseus. It's directed with, I guess, a workman-like efficiency by Potter protege David Yates. He did a bunch of the Potter films. He works well with his actors while handing the movie's most spectacular moments over to his effects team. There's nothing fresh here that will win over new fans, but there is a level of craftsmanship and commitment to lore that'll keep the fan base appeased. As the third chapter in an aging franchise, The Secrets of Dumbledore delivers on comfort and quality, and that's what you're looking for in a third chapter. So I didn't hate this film, but, you know, I've seen it and we can all move on. You there?
Sorry, I muted my microphone because it was getting all fast and furious out on the street outside here.
Oh, wow.
Look, I don't understand the point in like watching these movies. So I, like yourself, I was an adult when Harry Potter was a phenomenon. So I didn't read the books because I was an adult.
Yeah.
Movies came along and I think I saw the first one and I was a bit nonplussed by it. Like, it was totally fine. But again, I was an adult and it was a film that was made ostensibly for kids.
Sure.
And it's totally fine that if you grew up watching those movies and you're stuck with those movies, you're bought into that world. It becomes part of your psyche, you know, as you come of age. And so you just sort of stick with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally fine. It doesn't excuse the immaturity of the Harry Potter fans that just can't quite let it go at this point. But that's neither here nor there.
We're going to get phone calls.
I don't care. So send your phone calls, send your letters, stamp self-addressed envelopes directed at me. Okay. What I don't understand is why anybody who hasn't already bought into the Harry Potter films is going to bother seeing these movies at this point. Like, I kind of get it with Marvel films in that you've got brand Marvel and like 28 films in and a handful of TV shows at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But each of those are a new jumping on point. They introduce new characters, and yes, there might be a bit of crossover with other characters, but there are jumping on points, and you're going to like some more than others because they've got an entirely different flavor and there's, you know, something to it. Okay, but these Harry Potter films, they really are just talking to the same crowd over and over again.
Yep.
And yes, that crowd gets bigger because younger people come online and start reading the books, and so that crowd does grow. I don't know if people are really dropping off these books or these films at any point, or if they do stick with them. And I'd be interested to see the box office as it carries on. But I just don't see the value in watching it. And I remember seeing the trailer for this and thought this kind of looks half interesting because I wasn't paying attention to the beginning of the trailer, which is when you hear the Harry Potter musical cue, the little jingle jangle sort of enter in. So I'd missed that. And I started watching the trailer going, oh, this kind of looks like a big, interesting thing. And then I realized it's a Harry Potter thing. And my interest just subsided immediately because it's impenetrable at this point. Like, I just don't see the value and I don't understand why I'd get involved.
Let me tell you a very brief story. I saw.
Also, sorry, I should say,
yeah.
Like, I don't need to get involved either. Like, these movies aren't made for me, and that's fine. Like, I don't actually mind that so much, but I just wonder about the closed off nature of these films as they're now, 20 What was the first Harry Potter? Was it 2000 or was it a bit after that?
Yeah, no, 2000-ish, yeah.
Yeah. So like, let's say it's been 22 years of these films. Like they just seem so closed off.
Yes, two quick points. I only watch them out of professional sort of consideration. I would not be going to see these movies otherwise.
Sorry, can we just go into that as well? Which is that, and this isn't like me attacking you. I'm just sort of wondering, this is more just a conversational thing, but like, what is the actual value of you going along to these movies? Like, it's not like anything that you would say as a critic is going to change the mindset of anyone. It's not like you'd be saying to the Harry Potter fan, you know what, this one isn't very good, because they're still going to go and watch it. And also because you're not really bored in it. You're not actually the audience for these films either. Like, you're not the hardcore fan. And I kind of presume that these films are just for the hardcore fans at this point.
I have to apply like I applied to...
So what can you bring to the review that's actually of value to the audience, as well as you having to sit through this for 3 hours, plus traveling to and from the film?
As I bring to this film what I bring to every film as a reviewer, I look at certain elements of it and see how they work in the language of film, in the production of cinema. So I can look at how the story elements are protracted, how the special effects are done, how the acting plays across. These are all relevant points that can be made in reviewing the film, and I hope that came across in my review to a certain extent. You have to be careful when you say, what's the point of making these films and why you bother seeing them if you're not the target audience and if you're not going to influence anybody in what you have to say. In what you have to say, because then I would then have to apply that to Marvel, to DC, to Star Trek, to Star Wars. These are all franchise films, and these are all properties that have no. And I disagree with you that most Marvel films have a jump on point for the uninitiated. I don't think they do, and I don't think it's a strong enough jump on point in most Marvel films to bring in new viewers. They're just sort of playing to those that are already there. So I have to, in my reviews, bring exactly the same objectivity to these films, even when the very sort of core interest in them isn't one that I share.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that when I reviewed, was the Marvel show the other week, Moon Knight. Like, my review was pretty much just that either you're bored in on Marvel or you're not at this point.
Yep.
So, I mean, that was very much the approach I came from. So I don't entirely disagree, but I do disagree that there aren't jumping on points for Marvel for casual viewers along the way. Like, all of these films are new characters introduced to, like, there may be crossover elements, but like, they're still relatively like accessible stories for the most part. Your level of investment in it is probably not necessarily going to be particularly high if you haven't already watched one of the other 27 films from it before, because you've had the opportunity to see 27 films. So either you're into superhero shit or you're not. But I mean, you're probably right with Star Wars. Like, that is definitely is a bit more locked off. And there's very much, they're like the Harry Potter films in that they're a very tonally specific, very insular universe. And I don't think they've done enough to really sort of expand that out. I think there's a lot you can do with Star Wars that they just don't seem to want to touch.
There's elements to reviewing the Harry Potter and the Fantastic Beasts franchise, because they're big franchise entrants, and there are sort of legitimate aspects of them that do change on a film by film basis that are worth noting. The fact that this one turns out that Dumbledore had a gay affair with Grindelwald along the way, I wasn't expecting that. So there are small elements that will impact the film in a broader social sense, and that can be brought out in these films, which I don't always think is the filmmaker's intention, or which I certainly don't think Warner Brothers went into these films and said, hey, what can we do that really shakes up the fabric of society with these films? But I do believe that I have to sort of apply a certain objectivity and look for interesting elements in my review of these films that, they don't enthuse me, but they're in cinemas now. But you're right, I don't think anything that I say, and I don't think anything that Warner Brothers is doing to market the third Fantastic Beasts film is going to bring in anybody new to the franchise. You are absolutely right in that regard.
Yeah, so I mean, this is really a conversation I was having with myself in regards to when I did review the Marvel series the other week. And I just sort of thought, well, I don't understand the actual value in me reviewing it at that point. For those, I actually am bought into it because I've been watching all these Marvel films and TV shows, and I'll continue to do so. Like, I'm not wild about a lot of them, but for the most part, like, I'm perfectly happy to go along with the ride of it. But at the same time, I also knew it was kind of content for content's sake. And I was talking about it just because it's the big thing that week, but just because it's the big thing, I don't know that I was really bringing any value to the world by discussing it.
But isn't that thin ice to skate along for reviewers and for the coverage industry, for want of a better phrase out there, that if we decide that, all these movies have their audience and nothing I do or say is going to change that, isn't that making our job irrelevant and what we do irrelevant in many respects? We can't just count on Licorice Pizza or Drive My Car or, something to come along that and to really engage us and really something we can, talk in depth about. We also have to speak about things that people are going to be watching.
I mean, like, that's the thing. And like, that's why I talked about Moon Knight, because that is the show that everyone would talk about. But I think I came from it just with the viewpoint of just my review was short and sharp. And it was basically, you're bored in it, you're not, but these are the elements that work. These are the ones that don't. And then I just kind of got out of it. But even then, I don't know it's really bringing any value, even having that shorter conversation. Like, maybe it's just better just bypassing and just acknowledge that it's around and maybe have a cultural conversation around that. But I don't know if a review actually benefits the world. And to your question, does this really just render a lot of reviewers moot? I think the answer is yes.
Which is why reviewers have to keep challenging themselves, have to keep understanding the format, understanding the changing nature of the medium, and come at it from both traditional storytelling elements and what we can apply to it as people with film knowledge, and where it's taking the medium and where it's taking the format that warrants discussion. Do we lead the conversation in how we cover these films, or do we just echo what the studios and the marketing departments want us to say and help their dialogue? It is a challenge that I face every day.
I don't think the answer is either. I think the answer is just to shut up. And now that I've said that, here's my review for a new Apple TV Plus show called Slow Horses.
I don't normally do these kind of speeches, but this feels like a big moment. I know it's not easy being banished from MI5 to my department, but that's on you. Only screw-ups get sent to Slough House, and I've got to be honest, working with you has been the lowest point in a disappointing career.
Okay, this is fresh IP, Simon. Fresh IP. You've never seen.
I'm excited, and I can relate to that last quote there about being the lowest point in a disappointing career. I'm there right now.
Wait, what? Okay, look, Slow Horses. Let's talk about this. It's a spy drama in the spirit of John le Carre novels, and that should be enough to let you know whether you're in or out on this kind of a show from the outset. But what I would suggest is this. If you've made an immediate judgment on the show based on the fact that it's kind of like a John le Carre novel, maybe step back for a moment, because the show is a lot more spirited than you may assume. Now, I mentioned John le Carre. This is absolutely one of those spy dramas in his style. It's got covert, quiet missions involving stealing files from unsuspecting marks in cafes, stealthy missions, shadowing targets, and the like. But where the show approaches the genre is by coming from it in an entirely different direction than we're used to. This is a show that focuses on the losers in the espionage business. These are the deadweight spy agents that agencies want to be rid of. Now, the MI5 agents that we follow in Slow Horses work at Slough House. It's an outpost where nothing of consequence happens. The agents are all complete failures. And if you're an agent who flames out in a spectacular fashion, you get sent to Slough House until the boredom of working there prompts you to quit. And to explain the sort of people that are there, there's this great story in the second episode where one of the agents recounts his own journey to their office. And he explains how he was once reviewing classified files on the train and he accidentally left one file behind. So it's on the train saying goodbye and he knows it's gone and it's just adieu. Anyway, it's heartbreaking as you hear him talk about breaking down crying after he found out that the file he'd lost had been found. And he discovered it from watching the TV news. Like, that's how he knew that his career was over. And this led to him soon divorcing his wife because she has very little sympathy for the trauma that he went through. Anyway, it's an amazing story. But getting back to the actual focus of the show, as the series opens, it's with a really high-octane action sequence in which Agent River Cartwright, what a fantastic name,
wow,
chasing down a suspected terrorism target at the airport. He fails twice during the operation, which leads to the explosive death of a train full of people. Now, thankfully, as we later learn, it was just a training operation and no one actually died. But it's enough for Cartwright to be dumped over to Slough House, where he's left working under Jackson Lamb, another great name, who's a gruff boss this guy is so thoroughly disheveled that even Steve Bannon would be telling him that he looks unkempt and straightened up. Lamb's deeply committed to his staff not doing anything, and he gets visibly angry if there's even the suggestion of his staff doing any after-hours work. And while that sounds like the premise for a really zany, wacky spy sitcom, the show is actually really grounded in the drama of the situation. And this is the drama that arises when Cartwright finds a crossover between his mundane work and a hostage that's been taken in a very high-profile act of terrorism. Now, because this is filmed entertainment, Cartwright obviously defies his boss's wishes and starts investigating. He's aided by another younger agent named Sid Baker, played by Olivia Cooke, and she brings a generational element into the series. Many viewers will connect with the idea of frustrated younger staff who are feeling hemmed in professionally by an unmovable boss who hampers the good work that's being done. Like most Apple TV Plus shows, the production quality on the show is great. It absolutely matches the visual quality of the biggest mid-range spy dramas we've ever seen on a big screen. All 6 episodes are directed by journeyman director James Hawes. And this is interesting. It's written by the thick of it writer and actor Will Smith. No, not that Will Smith. This is ostensibly a drama, but the show isn't afraid to occasionally be funny, and the jokes are actually quite good, like the thick of it level jokes. It's lush visuals that are matched by a really wonderful cast. You got Dunkirk's Jack Lowden, who leads the series, with the aforementioned Olivia Cooke supporting, and playing Jackson Lamb, again, great name, is Gary Oldman, who leads into his past connection with the genre, and you may remember a very memorable turn taken in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Jonathan Pryce, no stranger to spycraft himself, is in this, along with Kristen Scott Thomas, and they both appear in pivotal roles. This is 6 episodes of a tightly paced, smart, and funny thriller. It's still early in the year, but fully expect to hear people declaring this one of the year's best by the end of 2022. Simon, I adore this program. It is great.
This is a must-watch for me. It has been all over my social feeds this week. Apple are giving it a big push. The cast itself is reason to tune in. Oldman back in Le Carre territory. If I remember correctly, the Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy movie was an acclaimed film, but I thought it was a bit of a slog to get through, enlivened by his performance, but very quote-unquote British in the way the story was told. And I think I had that sort of feeling about Slow Horses, but because of everything you say, is definitely worth some time invested in this. In 6 hour-long episodes, I'm assuming that's not a big commitment for a bit of quality television like this.
Yeah, and it's like hour longs, but they were like 48, 52 minutes. So yeah. So I mean, really by the end, you've squeezed in an episode.
Wow. Jonathan Pryce, Kristen Scott Thomas, Gary Oldman together, that's some acting royalty there. That's amazing.
Yeah. Look, it's fantastic. All the supporting actors are completely on point. Like, I went into this expecting this to be a fairly slow, very procedural thriller. I was a bit surprised to find exactly just how fast-paced it was and also how funny it is. Like, it's a genuinely funny program, and I don't know, it ticks so many boxes for me. I adored it in a way that I expected to be really just going through the motions.
Okay, so I'm going to go to a new documentary on Netflix, Jimmy Savile, A British Horror Story. And I should warn people that while we won't be mentioning in detail the crimes of Jimmy Savile, there are references in my review to content in the documentary series. So please be warned.
And also be warned, as we come out of this, I'll be making all manner of inappropriate jokes, and on we go.
He knew everybody.
Can I thank you for everything you do for every good cause?
To raise £10 million in 3 years.
With Jim, you accepted things as normal, but it was abnormal.
Unlike the man himself, who was a boorish, grotesque, anomalous celebrity figure whose acts of charitable generosity engendered him to a nation, the documentary Jimmy Savile, A British Horror Story is a very understated work, but one that carries with it some profound insight and impact. For the bulk of its 2-part, 3-hour running time, this Netflix documentary presents a 2-tiered narrative. The first tier chronicles Jimmy Savile's skill at self-promoting himself into the pop culture zeitgeist from his days as a field cadet reporter through his frontman status for the swinging 60s and 70s London scene to his decades volunteering in hospitals. We learn what a beloved figure he was across class and across generations. The second narrative tier are the insights provided by those that knew him and those who suspected him of an alternative, darker life. As Savile held sway with the likes of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Charles and Diana, those that worked with him claimed he was impenetrably private. There was no Jimmy Savile beyond the public image, but rumours persisted, increasingly loud whispers from the industry that were party to his behaviour on the set of his TV hits Top of the Pops and Jim'll Fix It, of his predilection for underage sexual contact. Where a British horror story proves disturbingly unforgettable is how it captures Savile by way of innuendo and bravado, slyly outing himself over 4 decades in the media, and how, save for a few journos, nobody, his peers, his fans, the police, questioned his secretive lifestyle. As stated in the film, he groomed a nation, portraying himself teasingly as not the man everyone thought he was, yet when questions arose about his public facade, he parried and dodged, and deflecting with a puff of his cigar and a cheeky wink to the audience. Quite deliberately, details of the putrid abuse that he perpetrated are kept until the final hour. A very static camera focuses on a woman named Sam Brown, who's now middle-aged, who recounts in shocking detail how Jimmy Savile destroyed her life. It is all the documentary needs to drive home what a perverse monster Savile was, along with the fact that he was ultimately found to have committed at least 400 known acts of a similar nature over a 50-year period. A British horror story avoids the exploitative label that can rightly be applied to some of the streaming sector's documentary output. Instead, this is an examination of how our adoration of celebrity can mask evil, how the young lives ruined decades ago became the tortured adults of today, and why the names of these predatory monsters, names that can enchant a population, should be expunged from history. This is a pretty remarkable documentary, and I recommend it to everyone.
Yeah, so I said at the beginning of the podcast, I was going to come into this as a hater for all of this. My issue here is just that there's just something that feels so predatory, and I understand the weight of using that word in the subject matter here, but something so predatory about real life crime stories. And I don't know, like it's not even just a matter of the fact that this is a relatively recent sort of story. I mean, obviously his crimes take place over a number of decades, and there's obviously some like old legacy crimes that have taken place here. But like we really only know the sort of truth about Savile that's come out in what, like last 10 years thereabouts. So it still feels very new, and it just kind of feels so much like we're just rubbernecking and gawking into a lot of just really personal, horrible tragedy. I know it's something about the entire genre. It's not necessarily just this documentary.
Yeah. Oh, look, I agree. And the point I make in there about, you know, there are fingers that can be pointed at the documentary output of some of the streamers at the moment, that, and before that, the tabloid newspapers, and before that, the dime store, National Enquirer type things. You're absolutely right. These can take on a vulgar, disgusting, predatory, quote unquote, predatory sort of nature. This one looks more at how he was able to position himself in society, and how everyone was blind to him based on the sort of his personality and what he was able to do without anyone questioning him, and how that should never happen again. When it finally reveals details of his acts and the breadth to which he was able to commit these horrible offences, it does so to drive home the point that we should never let this happen again. And I think that's where this one separates itself from the cheesier, more exploitative documentaries.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd tar them all with the same brush.
Yeah, okay.
I don't care how well they dress themselves up. Like, it's still part of the same genre. And it's not just documentary series on streamers either. Like, I think what really rankles me is just the rise of true crime as a genre upon itself, largely driven by podcasts, but obviously streamers have gotten on board with the true crime phenomena also.
Yeah, but that's always been part of, like, the publishing industry has been full of true crime stories and
oh yeah, it's not new. I'm certainly not going out there the brand new like shift that's taking place. But at the same time, like, I just don't feel that I'm there for it.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's move on to our next one. What's it called?
Speaking of things that I'm not there for, let's take a listen to How We Roll.
I'm 35, didn't go to college, and the one job I'm qualified to do just laid me off. I'm better at bowling than anything I've ever done. Maybe now's the time to take my shot.
That's the people on the Hindenburg about taking unnecessary chances.
That's it. That's my review. No, wait, I should actually say something about that awful clip we just listened to. So look, there's an intense joy that I get from going to a bowling alley. Everything there feels less than real. It's got weird lighting. It's overly loud, and you lose all sense of time and place after a few minutes of being in there. And those same qualities exist in a new Pete Holmes multicam sitcom, How We Roll. But none of it offered me the joys of the actual bowling alley. It's the gutter bowl of television comedies. In the sitcom, Pete Holmes is a married guy with a kid. They live somewhere in the Midwest, complete with Midwestern values that come with that. He's an everyday schmo. He's an everyday working Joe until he's laid off from work. Unemployed, he falls into a spiral of zero self-worth. He's spending his days at a private pity party. As the first episode launches, we find out that in recent days, he's also been doing something that is hidden from his wife. Every day, he's going to the bowling alley. Now, Pete in the show, he's great at bowling, apparently. He's not just impress your mates who paid $19.95 for 2 games shoe hire and Coke good. He's legitimately good. National competition good. His stats are good enough that he could dominate professional games, but dare he be emboldened enough to pursue a career as a professional bowler? And as a story, that's actually kind of an interesting idea. A person challenged by whether to leave security behind if presented with the opportunity to actually believe in yourself. But as a sitcom, holy shit, is it terrible? Pete Holmes, he won over a lot of fans from his HBO show Crashing, and I'm certainly one of them. I adored that program. That show was pretty much a thinly veiled version of himself, which is a big doofus who chases his dreams of becoming a stand-up comedian. It's basically him putting in the Malcolm Gladwell style 10,000 hours to get really good at stand-up. And it's obviously a parallel to the idea of the show, which is about a man throwing caution to the wind to follow a professional dream. But that's really where that comparison ends. How We Roll starts with Pete being very good from the very beginning of the show. Plus, it fails to capture the spirit of humanity that you found in Crashing. It doesn't have the humor, the heartbreak, the broken dreams, or the enrichment that comes with finding success. Nothing about How We Roll is any good. The writing stinks. The performances are terrible. The production is a turd. And this show, it airs on CBS in the US, but we get it here on Paramount Plus. If you go to Paramount Plus, you will not find the show being promoted on the front page or anywhere on the site. You actively have to go looking for it. And don't do that. Instead, know that Paramount Plus were doing you a favor by not letting you know that the show exists. Simon.
I saw it on the running sheet. I hadn't heard of it. I thought, I'm having a quiet afternoon. I'm going to do a bit of Paramount Plus surfing. So I had a look at this.
No.
I had a look at the first episode of How We Roll. Immediately, I thought, Dan's having some kind of breakdown. Why is he reviewing this? It is 21 minutes of the cheesiest, nastiest looking 70s style sitcom. It really is only set in 2 places. This tinny looking kitchen that is, it looks like it's half built by the crew, and the bowling alley. And it is that old sitcom style, which I thought sort of went out back in the early 80s, where people walk into a room, say their funny lines, walk out of the room. It was perfectly sent up in the Stop Effing with Kevin show that was on Amazon Prime not long ago, where that horrible sort of central character, and he's awful in this. What'd you say his name was?
Oh, well, the actor, the comedian's Pete Holmes.
Yeah, I hadn't seen Crashed. I didn't know of Crashed, and I know
Crashing's amazing. You got to check out
Crashing. Yeah, everyone says it's very good, but
he's terrible first episode, but it finds its way.
He's tinny and terrible and fake in this. This is the sort of sitcom I didn't think they made anymore, and yet here we are. So everything you say about How We Roll is right. It's one of the unfunniest, most uninspired bits of American TV I've seen in many years, actually.
So you liken this to the sort of sitcom that was being parodied by Kevin Kneff himself, and It's actually not one of those sitcoms at all. So he's paired here with a wife who's probably of fairly comparable like attractiveness. Like, I actually think that the casting of the show is like not horrendous, but just the material is not good, just the entire setup. As you said, like this is every bit the proto-sitcom style. And you think back to like those bad old days where you'd find people with a sense of moral superiority saying how I don't watch television, and they'll just sort of badmouth American TV shows and say, well, it's not as funny as the British programs. But the thing is that like this is absolutely the sort of show that they're thinking about when they start trashing American shows.
Yeah,
there were good examples of sitcoms. Like it's not like there ever been like, you know, a time period where you only ever had these bad sitcoms around. There's always been classic, great, groundbreaking sitcoms. But at the same time, there is like this sort of a sitcom, which was just very traditional TV product. And the only thing I've seen worse than this recently, the only thing that's worse than it is there's a British sitcom that stars, what's his name? Lee Mack, who people would know from the very funny Would I Lie to You?
Mm-hmm.
He just launched, I think it's season 11 or 12 of what I think is one of the worst TV shows that's ever been created. It's this thing called Take Me Out Tonight. Something like that. gosh, I can't think of the name of it, but I watched the very first episode from, 12 years ago. And then I watched the most recent episode. And boy, did that show not find a voice anywhere in those 12 years.
Wow. Funny man. That's a shame. Okay, so it's called How We Roll.
Shows, but boy, is that sitcom awful.
How We Roll. Why would Paramount Plus play this? Obviously, this is part of a package deal of stuff that they've got, and they're just trying to find a space for it in between the busy periods.
It's because CBS decided to greenlight it. They knew it wasn't particularly good, so they're just burning it off towards the end of their TV season.
Yeah.
And Paramount, because it's owned by CBS, they have the rights to it. So why not just put it up on the platform? They've already had 2 views from it.
It's you and I. That's true. All right, let's move to the final review of the show. It's called Ambulance, and I saw it at the movies.
Officers down in front of the bank. Automatic weapons being fired.
Easy. You want to drive or can I drive?
Bank robbery suspects have taken an ambulance.
Compared to his action monoliths of years gone by, films like Armageddon and Pearl Harbor and the Transformers films, Michael Bay's latest, Ambulance, is his version of an art house drama. At its core is the story of 3 people who are stuck in a confined space and need to understand each other in order to survive. And that is how he establishes his narrative over the course of a terrific first hour. Returned soldier and dedicated family man Will Sharp, played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen, is in dire financial need. His wife is balancing a newborn son on her hip for the whole film, has an uninsurable disease, and Will can't secure steady work. As a last resort, he reaches out to his brother, Daniel, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, who promises to help out if Will does him a favor, be the 4th man in a bank robbery crew that promises a $32 million payday. Now, these early scenes really smartly establish character traits and motivations and personalities. The heist goes off the rails in a spectacular sequence that rivals Michael Mann's downtown LA shootout in Heat for visual immersion and for sound design. In a final act of desperation, Danny commands an EMT vehicle as a getaway car, complete with tough girl paramedic Cam, played by Isa Gonzalez, who's the film's biggest plus, and a bleeding out cop called Zach, played by Jackson White. And then things get really stupid. Instead of tightening the screws on his 3 leads, Bay goes big and broad in his pursuit of his Bayhem brand. The movie spins off into idiotic, fast and furious terrain when Danny calls in his Mexican gang caricature mates who happen to have a muscle car with a Gatling gun they're willing to part with. All these empty action calories and Bay's tendency to double and then triple down on the faintest whiff of anything emotional blows the runtime out to over 2 hours, which is grotesquely self-indulgent. I think the cracking first hour will be enough to carry most action heads through to the end, but Bay's fleeting interest in his human scenery is pretty dispiriting. After 30 years making noise for noise sake spectacles, the tiresome, shallow grind that Ambulance becomes suggests Bay's detractors, those that claim he's never been particularly interested in his characters unless they're holding a gun or a steering wheel, they're probably spot on.
Yeah. Look, here's the thing with Michael Bay. Most of his films aren't very good.
No.
But the one thing I'll say about Michael Bay is that I think he's got a good sense of spatial awareness.
Sure.
And I know that's kind of damning with faint praise, but it's really actually a skill that I feel that a lot of big action, like heavy action directors don't really necessarily have. So I think back to a conversation that I had with some of my friends as I tried to convince them to watch, I think it was the 3rd Transformers movie.
Oh boy. Yep.
Was it the 3rd? Yeah, it must have been the 3rd one. Because the 3rd one's actually got this really amazing sequence in it. And it's an extended like 40-minute sequence where they go into a city that's been overrun by the bad Transformers and they got to go and do stuff. So I think there's like a small army of like commandos that are going in with what I presume is, what's his name?
Josh Duhamel and Shia LaBeouf, I think.
I presume that Shia was there, and there's probably like a scientist that went in with him and some sort of attractive lady. Yeah. So like they all sort of went in there. But what I really liked was that every sequence, I remember there's this great sequence where they're in a building and the building gets like pushed over. And so they're all running through this building down and get a great sense of scale as they're going through it. And they go jumping through the windows and the action tracks really, really well out of there. And then they land on the ground and you got a great sense of where they're standing from where they were in a building previously. Like it's really well crafted. And it came out roughly the same time as the Avengers movie came out. And one of the problems with Joss Whedon's The Avengers is that he's got a series of sequences that are very similar. It's like a large action sequence taking place in New York City, and it's not too dissimilar, but you follow the action in that and it's really muddled. You don't actually get a good sense of where the characters are, and they're all separated in different parts of the city, but you don't understand where the characters are and how far away they are from each other. And like, that's a mess. Michael Bay knows how to work with that.
Yes.
And so that's an amazing skill to have. Like, it is really big brain filmmaking. It's just a shame the rest of it sucks so badly.
Yeah, and that's how this comes across. And that's why I was so hopeful after the first hour in this film that he was going down a path that was going to combine exactly what you say he excels at, this being able to handle big scale action with humans in the middle of it. And I was hoping he was able to give his humans a little bit of heart, a little bit of perspective and some character elements in this one. But it just seems like he grows tired of these actors. He grows tired of these characters. He starts throwing in all these things like painting an ambulance green and driving along the LA River, all of which have no basis in common sense whatsoever. You know what I had watching this movie? I had a backwards feeling. I was enthralled and excited at the start of it. Yeah, this movie Benjamin buttoned me. That's exactly right. I was excited at the start of the film, and then by the time I got to the end of it, I was just like this. Like I worked in reverse. So you're right. This is a Benjamin Button movie, and not in a good way. So that was Ambulance. It's in wide release now.
Simon, we've reached the middle bit and I haven't looked at the run sheet. What are we actually talking about right now?
Hang on. I did just want to mention a couple of things. This week, I've also been watching
Sorry, let's reestablish ourselves.
Okay.
What else have we been watching? Is that right?
Well, I do want to do what else have we been watching this week, because on the Paramount Plus channel, Star Trek, the motion picture, has been released. It's been given a 4K Ultra HD restored and remastered release on Paramount Plus. And this is a movie that was a hit back in the day, but hugely derided by the critics. I saw it at the movies where I was bored by it. I've tried to watch it again on home video and was continually bored. But watching it in this pristine restoration and remastering, the effects are beautiful and the emotionality of the story comes through. This actually was quite an ambitious movie in its storytelling scope for a time that I didn't realize until now. So I was really hooked by Star Trek, the motion picture. Trekkies don't need to know that it's on Paramount Plus. They already would have followed it. They're queuing up for the 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, which will be released in September around the world. But if you haven't seen Star Trek, the motion picture, or don't want to watch it because some of the advanced word on it after 40 odd years, now's the time to watch it. It looks beautiful and it delivers. So that's what I've been. Have you been watching anything else this week?
So first of all, Star Trek. I've seen every Star Trek ever except for this. Motion picture. You
are in for a treat. Go into it with a mature sort of adult perspective and see some. Okay, that's your gone. All right, no, I forgot who I was talking to. I'm sorry.
Mature perspective. How dare you? Okay, so there are two things I've been watching this week. Actually, I've watched a whole bunch of things this week, but some of them are under like embargo, and I actually can't talk.
Okay, yep.
Which is why I only talked about two things this week. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Two things that I can talk about is I've been watching a series. The episodes I've been watching are from 2013, but it's a long-running Japanese series that's been going for about 30 years. And what happens is every year they release 2 or 3 specials that get played. And what happens on these specials, they run for about 3 hours a piece. And the entire special is about getting Japanese toddlers and putting them out on the street and giving them a mission. And then the cameras follow the toddler to see if they're able to go and do the thing they've been told to do. These aren't like spy missions by any means. These are like, hey, go to the shops, buy me, I need these 2 groceries and a bunch of flowers for your grandma. Go and get them for me. And then you watch the toddler who's never gone out by themselves before because they're toddlers. And so they're left to their own devices. And you watch as the toddler tries to...
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. It tries to piece together, like, exactly, am I doing the right thing? Am I going in the right direction? And like, it's like you're watching them exploring like toddler logic as they go through it. And it's kind of compelling.
What's it called? You haven't said the name yet.
Okay, so the show's called Old Enough.
Oh, wow.
And this is part of a deal that Nippon TV in Japan have struck, where they've sold Netflix just a whole bunch of their archive library content for years and years. Okay, so what Netflix have done is they've broken down this 3-hour special, and they've just broken it down to like 10 to 15-minute chunks. And so you just follow one of these toddlers, they go on one of their little missions. So it's really bingeable, easy to consume content. And
isn't that a little dangerous?
Yeah, but they've got like a camera crew that are following them around.
Oh, good.
So
well, if as long as they've got a camera crew.
Yeah, so it's not like the kids are completely out by themselves. But even so, like it is dangerous. Like there's no doubt about that.
So it's in chunks.
About it. Here's what's fascinating, Simon.
Okay, let me hear.
These specials get broadcast like 2 or 3 times a year. And when they do, these things are so popular in Japan that they estimated about like 1/5 of all people in Japan are watching these specials as they go to air.
Good grief. And they're 30 years old. This has been an ongoing franchise for...
An ongoing thing.
Wow, that is extraordinary. Old enough on Netflix, 10, 15-minute interstitial. This could become the hit of the Australian winter screening months. That sounds like definitely something worth watching.
Here's the thing. So much of this has like a very strong sort of taste of the... oh gosh, what was the name of that terrible American game show? Kids say the darndest things.
Oh, yes.
It's got a very kids say the darndest things aesthetic about it all. But I don't know. And like this may come from the fact that I've got like a 6-month-old at home now. So like maybe I'm a bit more open to this kind of programming.
Yes, you are.
But you know, it was kind of just, it's sort of just a bit interesting. And I don't know, I'm going to watch more than like another 1 or 2 of these interstitials before I get bored with it. But it's kind of watchable.
Okay.
So anyway, check it out. And the other thing I watched was a movie, Simon. This is one of the many movies that are being made for platforms like, and in this instance, HBO Max, because the idea of these platforms is to covertly just replace cinema. But this is a movie that stars...
I'm not going to bite. You go.
No, but that's what they're doing, though. Like, this is the plan. Like, they're commissioning all these direct-to-streaming films with the idea that people are just going to start consuming movies more and more at home. Like, that's the gambit they're playing, Simon, whether or not it plays out that way or not. But
they said the same thing about home video. They said the same thing about the VHS tape. So we'll see how it plays out.
I know. And look at us now. They finally made it there. They finally got us into submission. But anyway, Moonshot, the premise of it is that you've got the guy that plays Jughead in the Riverdale show and one of the girls that was in To All the Boys That I Kissed in My Yard Before I Got Milkshakes. That's not the name of it. You know, the Netflix movie I'm talking about. There's a series.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And it's got there's 3 movies to it, and it's been a huge success. And yeah, we didn't watch it. Isn't this one of the Cole? This is the Sprouse brother, the Cole Sprouse one.
Sprouse. So, yeah, as I said, Reggie from, not Reggie, Jughead from Riverdale. Yeah. So anyway, basically, Jughead is a guy who's desperate to go to Mars because it's set it's like in the future, about 30 years from now, and you can do that kind of thing. Mars, there's trips you can take where you can either fly up there to work, or there is the opportunity to pay $1 million and you can go out there for tourism-related reasons. He's not a man of means, but he's got the dream that he wants to go to Mars. It's his lifelong dream, and he's all of 17. And so he ends up falling for this girl. It's like a one-night sort of meet cute, and she goes to Mars the next day. And so he stows away with the idea that he's going to go and meet her on Mars. So it's a very big romantic gesture. Meanwhile, there's this other woman on the same trip, and she is going after this guy that she's been in a long-term relationship with for, you know, up to about 10 years, thereabouts. And so she's in really tight with the family, but, you know, it's not really love. It's kind of a relationship of obligation and just, you know, being comfortable. But anyway, she's going there for love. He's going there for love. But wait a second, Simon, they fall for each other.
Oh, well, that's what Mars will do to you. That's a very Martian thing to do.
Yeah, classic Mars. We all learned about that in school.
Exactly right. Okay, that's what
I'll say about Moonshot, which is that while it's typical teen fare, it's not exactly particularly that engaging. There's a few scenes in it which kind of tickle your fancy a little bit. There's a few characters that I think are kind of smart and savvy and just kind of interesting in a way that teen comedies usually have a couple of peripheral characters that you do sort of catch your attention every so often. But this film has a really interesting visual aesthetic to it. Nice. So it's fairly cheap. Like, as I said, like this is a film that's made for streaming. So they've certainly kept the budget down. Like,
is it How We Roll Tree?
No, I mean, that's just a shitty sitcom. Like, this is probably like about a $10-15 million feature, I'd imagine.
Okay.
That'd be my guess. Okay. And like, there's some fairly sort of elaborate sets, but they're also kind of cheap looking sets as well. But they're all really interestingly lit. And like, you're just watching some of these sequences and they really are sort of very visually dynamic. So if you've got a 4K TV and your streaming service supports it, check it out, because I think you'll be surprised by at least how good it looks, even if you think it's maybe a little bit naff and you've seen this kind of nonsense before.
Is it on Australian TV or just HBO Max?
Well, it's an HBO Max original, but it's also streaming here in Australia on Binge.
Good to know. All right, it's called Moonshot, and you watched Old Enough, and I watched Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So there's some. What else have we been watching? People are contacting me, Dan. We teased the screen watching middle bit and didn't go ahead with it, so we better get on with it.
Sure, I can find out what it's about. Okay, Simon, all I can see here is you mentioned something about crystal balling, and I read that initially as eyeball rolling. But
no, that's for you to do when I get into the segment. This will be a short one. I just want to do a little bit of crystal balling about the Cannes Film Festival. Stick with me, everyone. This is what we know so far. Now, they are announcing the full program for the 75th Cannes Film Festival in a week's time on April 14. But so far, there's been some big announcements. Biggest of all is that Baz Luhrmann's latest, the Australian shot film Elvis, starring Austin, not Pendleton, someone whose name I've forgotten, Austin Baker, I think, and Tom Hanks. That'll be Hey?
Sorry, keep going.
That'll premiere at the Cannes Film Festival in competition, it's believed. Also, 2 days before it premieres internationally will be Tom Cruise's latest Top Gun Maverick. Now, they have been trying to get this film to the Cannes Film Festival for 2 years now. Cannes was a very truncated version last year, and Top Gun didn't open last year, but they've managed to secure it. They're getting Tom Cruise, they're getting Jennifer Connelly, they're getting all the key cast and crew along for the premiere of the film on May 25. They'll also be screening a huge Tom Cruise retrospective over the course of the festival. No details have been released as yet about which films we'll be screening, but that's going to be fairly big news. The Cannes Film Festival has been in a fair degree of flux over the rule of streaming content, how the streaming content has to have a French theatrical release to be eligible for the Cannes Film Festival, and how the streamers are not willing to do that. So a lot of the key Netflix films and Amazon films haven't been going to Cannes, but they're looking at an announcement may be made on that, probably not with regard to this year, but going forward. There's a new president starting at the at Cannes Festival this year, and she looks to be making...
Sorry, you just tapped on something I can actually talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought you might be interested in that. Yeah.
Can I just talk about, I hate film festivals. I've decided this years ago.
Well, you're a barrel of laughs today, I got to say.
No. Well,
thank you. As someone who runs a film festival, I do love hearing that. Thank you very much.
No, like your film festival is different. So your film festival is films that are legitimately movies that you're not going to be able to find playing on big screens anywhere else. Like, it is very much you have a serious art film festival. And so that's fine. But something like Cannes, so much of the films are films from around the world that will be playing in mainstream art house cinemas. Like, it's not going to be difficult to find a lot of these movies. Like the films that are playing at your festival, Simon, like if I don't see them at your festival, there's a good chance I'm just never going to see them.
That's true.
And it's because distribution just isn't really there for them. But distribution is here for something like Cannes. And all it means is that films like Elvis and probably not so much Top Gun, it's got such a commercial imperative, it's not that big a thing, but films like Elvis will get delayed for 2 or 3 months so they can have their debut at Cannes because it keeps the talent happy. But like, it just means that it's keeping the films away from where they're actually meant to be seen, which is as entertainment that I can just go and enjoy at the cinema. Like, it's not... I just don't see movies as necessarily being this sort of high art form. They're supposed to be a consumable art of the people.
I disagree with that entirely. Of course, there's an art form. There's an artistry to cinema that is both. But both forms of the medium are celebrated at the Cannes Film Festival. There's the show business side. There's the Top Guns and the Elvis that are celebrated at the Cannes Film Festival.
I'm saying that it shouldn't be so austere that it's locked off from you being able to see it.
But some cinema is austere.
But it shouldn't be. It should be a cinema. It's for the people. It's not like theater where you go and see it and it's like a one-off experience. It's kind of like the same bullshit with NFTs. The idea that art gets locked up, like Kevin Smith, and I'd hate to use the word art anywhere near associated with Kevin Smith because that guy's awful. And also he blocked me on Twitter, so screw that guy. But like, he's got this new film that's coming out, which is going to be an NFT. And my understanding is that unless you're the person who spent like, $300,000 to buy the NFT, you're never going to be able to see this movie.
Right.
Like, that's not what film's about.
Okay. Well, that's changed. Part of what the Cannes Film Festival does is help change the definition of what film is. It is moving with the times. One of their major sponsors this year is the TikTok organization. They're sponsoring a short film festival. So,
sorry, how is Netflix not allowed, but TikTok is?
Well, it's
what is with the French, Simon?
It's not a competition format. You're not trying to get TikTok content into cinemas. It's an entirely different festival-based format. So there has to be some sort of, the problem with Netflix and the relationship it has with the Cannes Film Festival goes way back to the start of the Cannes Film Festival, when it was the lead-in period for the sort of the French film industry to launch all their films. That's where it gets its cachet from. It's international standing.
It's and it is to do with cinema exhibition in France, though. So it's not just a festival thing, as much as there is a general cultural belief there that a movie is something that exists in the cinema, and so a streaming film isn't of the same stature. And so they want to have sensitive protectionism to make sure that the art form that they hold dear is able to keep on going in a cinema exhibition first position. And so that's why Netflix gets locked out of that.
Well, but that Netflix sort of brought that on itself, as did Amazon, as did some of the other ones, by moving in and taking key creatives and investing a whole lot of money, and the threat of actually changing the format and changing the very essence of the film industry as it stood in that country, which does hold, as the country that invented cinema, it does hold the movie experience up on a very high, and rightly so.
Yeah, I've got no problem with France or Cannes deciding they don't want streaming now. Like, that's fine. That's their prerogative. But I just don't like, I'm talking broadly about festivals, not necessarily just Cannes. I just kind of feel that festivals, and Cannes may be the worst of it because there's so much prestige around it that it does delay films from being released for often quite some time. And like, especially the last couple of years where Cannes hasn't really been running in the way that, it has traditionally. So like the last Wes Anderson film, which is something I was dying to see, like kept on being delayed and held back because they were hanging out for a Cannes release.
Well, they were hanging out for a festival berth, but once again, we're talking about 2 years that the industry has never seen or had never been impacted by in the history of the industry, other than the world wars. You had when cinemas were closed down, when films weren't being released. It's a time that isn't of itself, by definition, just a completely unique period. So yeah, Wes Anderson's film fell into that gap, and it didn't get the acclaim. Maybe it didn't get the acclaim and the release it deserved because it didn't play the Cannes Film Festival. So I don't know. I'm a fan of film festivals because they give smaller films in their purest form a leg up, a profile. And that's what the best moments of the Cannes Film Festival in Berlin and Edinburgh and all the others are as well. So that's important. That's the screen watching middle bit.
Did we even talk about what you were trying to talk about? I just derailed it entirely, Simon.
No, I think I got to the end of it. Oh, there's a couple of big movies that are coming out. The other big Australian film is George Miller's 3,000 Years of Longing with Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba. They're looking at, although that hasn't been confirmed, there's high hopes that because he was the jury president the last couple of years, or year before last maybe, or last year. No, it was Spike Lee last year, so year before last. They're hoping that George Miller's film 3,000 Years of Longing will premiere at the 2022 festival.
And before we move on to the next thing, you said, I've been a barrel of laughs today. This is what you've brought to the table today, Simon. You've brought a Harry Potter movie.
Yes.
You've brought Jimmy Savile and Michael Bay and the Cannes Film Festival. Why do you expect me to be happy about any of this?
This is on me? This is on me now. Oh my God. I can't know. I'm a commentator on content as it's delivered on a weekly basis. I had no other choices. So I'll tell you what this is. This is nighttime podcast recording. These are the crazy places it goes.
No, I'll tell you what you are. You're a bad dinner party guest. Okay, Simon, let's enter the part of the podcast where we talk about what's coming up.
Oh, you want me to go on this one? Okay, well, I'm going to get in trouble for this as well. The streaming platform I Wonder, which brings some of the best documentaries from around the world to the home viewing audience, has a movie called Prey. Now, this is a very powerful account of a man who is suing the Catholic Church for sexual abuse against him when he was a boy. This has won a whole series of film festival awards around the world. It represents the start of sexual assault awareness month here in Australia and around the world. And what this film focuses in on is the determination of just how much compensation this gentleman and victims of sexual abuse should get from the Catholic Church. And it's really a courtroom drama about trying to establish just exactly what the Catholic Church should be charged with in terms of the money they owe. So it's a very powerful documentary. I Wonder gives you a 7-day free trial if you want to go over and see some of their content. And they have got some great docos there, iwonder.com.
There's a TV series called Outer Range, and it drops on Amazon Prime Video next Friday. So really we'd be talking about that on next week's podcast. Now, I believe, just hypothetically, I believe there was plans to review it on this week's program, telling you, hey, look, here's something interesting you might want to look at next week. But there's an embargo, which means that maybe that show couldn't get reviewed on this week's podcast, and you're going to have to wait till you can already see it before.
That's what I figured. And good cast, Josh Brolin, Imogen Poots, Lily Taylor, they're three big names.
And this is like a proper Western. Yeah. And I thought it'd be really cool to talk about a proper spy drama and a proper Western. But that's not permitted, so we're not going to talk about that.
All right. Anything else coming to TV in the week ahead?
Look, there's plenty of things coming in the week ahead, Simon. Plenty of things. What do we got here? I didn't actually look this up, but I know that there's stuff. Hold tight. There's the debut of Killing It, which you may remember I reviewed on the program last week.
Yes, you did. Craig
Robinson, yes. Yeah. Claudia O'Doherty. I was a very big fan of that program. They dropped the first episode, and then 2 weeks later, they're going to drop the whole season. So
must watch it. Got to check it out.
Must watch. It is a lot of fun. And oh gosh, I was going to talk about a bunch of the other shows, and I can't because they're not there. I can mention that Derry Girls is debuting in the UK, but I don't think we get that one here for a little while. And something people might want to check out is, do you remember there was that glorious period where you'd go and see a film from Fox and they'd play an Ice Age short featuring the character of Scrat?
Yes, I do. Very funny.
And it was always fun to see a little short before your movie. It was like back in the day, we would see Roger Rabbit before your feature film. But anyway, Scrat seems to have disappeared from the big screen, but he'll be there on your small screen via your Disney Plus with Ice Age Scrat Tales, which is a small collection of Scrat-related shorts.
Perfect. The kids will love that. The school holidays, which are happening around the country as we speak. So that's great viewing for the wee ones.
The kids. What about me? Anyway, Simon.
I do just want to mention very quickly for our Adelaide listeners, the Cinematheque at Mercury Cinema. They've got 3 weeks of Generation X classics. On next week, that starts with Singles, the great Bridget Fonda film that screens on April the 13th. Then Reality Bites, Winona, April 20, and then Ghost World, which is sort of post-Gen X, but still kind of Gen X-y. April 27, the Mercury Cinema celebrates 30 years this year, and their Cinematheque always has some amazing, amazing films to check out. So if you're in Adelaide, or if you can drive to Adelaide, and we can all drive to Adelaide, check out the Cinematheque at Mercury Cinema.
Singles I never really quite liked until I rewatched it for the 6 months ago, and really quite came to enjoy it.
Have you ever seen Ghost World, the one with ScarJo and what's her name?
Thora Birch.
Yeah, Thora Birch.
Never heard of it.
Oh wow.
No, I saw it in the cinema when it came out, but I don't think I've revisited since then. I remember liking it, but yeah.
Old news. This week in history, I'm going to jump straight into this. All the President's Men with Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman, based on the book by Woodward and Bernstein about the Watergate break-in. It was released April 9, 1976 and became one of my very favorite movies. I love movies about journalism, and this is one of the great ones.
April 10, 1953, we had House of Wax, the first color 3D movie that premieres in New York, which of course gave way to the greatest artistic expression that cinema's really achieved, which was the movie poster for the Paris Hilton remake.
Great poster.
I don't know if this is true, but I believe it's a true fact.
Yeah.
The director of House of Wax, which was the first color 3D movie, who was actually blind in one eye, which meant he couldn't see the 3D images he was creating with that movie.
That's interesting. I'm going to want proof on that, but that's probably the case. Isn't that interesting?
I believe that's true.
April 11, 2020. Have you ever heard about the Night of Sora Aoi?
No, I haven't.
So Japanese porn actress Sora Aoi, she joined Twitter, prompting Chinese fans to circumnavigate Chinese censorship laws and create one of the first social media revolutions just to see what she had to say on Twitter. Isn't that interesting? That's the Twitter being used for good instead of, in every other case, evil.
Look, I mean, I'm not going to answer the Twitter debate with you because there's lots of goods that come out of it, but it's just kind of interesting that it was only when the emergence of the internet came around that sport stopped being the driver for technological take-up and it became about pornography. And it's interesting just to see that echoed here with the idea of China embracing Western social media with a porn star as the subject of it all.
Very true. Well said. Well said.
Yes, I'm very thoughtful when it comes to internet pornography.
I can tell.
April 13, 1992, Euro Disney opened in France and was a success from the get-go.
You're not even going to try the name?
No.
Okay. April 14, 2018, Beyonce is the first black woman to headline the Coachella Music Festival, and her performance became the most watched concert ever on a little thing called YouTube. Is there anything Beyonce can't do?
She can probably pronounce Coachella correctly.
That's true. Oh, Marne-la-Vallée in France is where Euro Disney opened.
Well,
touche. Birthday sting.
No, not happy birthday. No, not that. Please, no, not happy birthday.
My sting game has been terrible in this podcast.
Yeah, you've been off your sting games, and that's okay. You'll get it one day. Speaking of France, on April 9, 1933, Jean-Paul Belmondo, the star of Breathless, one of the great stars of the French New Wave of the 60s, he was born in Paris, France. He died in 2021.
So you got here that he's in Casino Royale. Is he in the good one or is he in the one with Daniel Craig?
No, he's in the good one. Oh, I get letters about that. No, he was in the original with David Niven and Woody Allen. Yeah, he was.
Woody Allen did it. He plays Bond.
He was, yeah.
Yeah. April 9, 1998, Elle Fanning from The Great and the Girl from Plainsville. She was born.
I love Elle Fanning. And here's my man, April 10, 1951, Steven Seagal, star of Above the Law, Hard to Kill, The Great Under Siege. He was born and then went off to Russia where he's a lackey for Putin.
You've got such a crush.
I do. I love
April
Steven
12,
Seagal.
1994.
I'm turning into him.
Is this why you refuse to be filmed from anything above the shoulders?
Yes, it's true. I've got this huge black coat on here that's very Seagal-esque.
I've suddenly realized I cannot think of how to pronounce her name here.
Saoirse
Ronan, born April 12th, 1994, star of Brooklyn, Lady Bird, and I believe that she was in Little Women, which is a better movie than those others who.
It's true.
Bronx, New York City.
What, isn't that strange? She was born in the Bronx. I thought she was like Irish born and bred, but she's obviously got some sort of East Coast connection there. So, and on April 13, 1942, the great Bill Conti, American composer, he did the great theme from Rocky and the great music from The Right Stuff. He was born somewhere, which I didn't write down there, but I love Bill Conti music. The theme from Rocky is still one of the great sort of musical themes of all time.
I like the way you adorably put in a note here telling me the music that would play us out, as though I would have it queued up in the machine here.
Yeah, as though you would read through the running sheet and see that I put that in there 4 days ago. But hey, that's fine. That's fine. It was the theme from Rocky. I don't know if we can do it now. We probably can't.
No, I'm a busy man. I'm an executive with a lot of, constraints on myself, Simon. Hey, look, this is the end of the podcast. Folks, thank you very much for listening to Screen Watching. Sorry, thank you for persevering with Screen Watching.
Persevering is a good word. It's been a hell of a show tonight. Well done.
My name is Dan Barrett. You can find me and my cranky pants at Twitter at the Dan Barrett. You can start your day with my free newsletter. It's called Always Be Cranky, and that's at alwaysbewatching.com. And it's got the big stories in TV, streaming, and film. And on Fridays, the cranking continues with the Always Be Streaming newsletter. That's not the way I meant to phrase that. And it recounts the big shows that launched that very week.
My name's Simon Foster. I'm on the Twitter at SimonRFoster1. Read my soothing words over at Screenspace, screen-space.net. Read my find all my meditative explorations of consciousness on the Screen Watching Facebook page at Screen Watching Podcast, and go to our Screen Watching YouTube channel where there's uncut interviews and fresh trailers to help you glide through the day on a bed of goodness.
Yeah. Folks, follow Screen Watching via your favorite podcast app. Load it up now, hit the follow button, let the good times roll.
All right, mate. It's been fun. I can't wait to talk again. It's always a joy. I love you.
Oh, sorry, you're talking to me.
I am talking to you. Of course I'm talking to you.
Very confused. Simon, it's been a pleasure. I enjoy my time with you.
Bye-bye.
See you, Simon.